The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
You're now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
If I guess if I just had a helicopter just to show off, I probably would have done the same thing that Donald Trump did today. Jumped in his helicopter, flew around a little bit, came back and landed just so he can show the world that this is what somebody like Donald Trump can do. Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Wednesday, July 20th, 2016. Yeah, man, this has become it's become even more of a sideshow. I kind of miss, like, okay, so tomorrow I'm thinking about streaming Trump's speech, right? Because I think everyone is going to want to know what this man is going to say. So we may stream, but everything else I'm catching after the fact because it's kind of hard for me to be participatory in such a it's insane. It's absolute madness, and I don't think there's any other way to describe it. So we're going to talk about a little bit, particularly last night. I have to talk about Ben Carson and his accusation of Hillary Clinton being in league with Lucifer. So I want to play that clip and then also about the fact that he wanted to use secular progressive as a pejorative. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I can't say I'm a religious man anymore because I don't do like a whole lot of organized religion, but I am a spiritual guy. I'm still a Christian, but I have never been so proud of being called a secular progressive as I was last night while Ben Carson tried to use it as a pejorative. And as a way of distinguishing or delineating or separating that audience from the rest of us. And it made me proud as shit. I was like, absolutely, I am a secular progressive. I am nothing like the people in that hall. So thank you, Ben Carson, for segregating us even further. So we'll talk about that. In international news, let's start at the top with international news because, again, American politics is such political fodder that we sometimes it's just so easy and fun to talk about, even though it's disgusting and aggravating. It's American politics is a sport. And sometimes we ignore the very important things that are happening in our international community. So I'm going to start with international news. And at the half-hour mark, 30 minutes after, we'll be speaking with attorney Michael Rothenberg. He is going to be giving us a crash course on – there's a lot of people headed to Philly, and a lot of you are going to protest. And this young man, dynamic attorney, firebrand. I could just tell by 5 minutes of talking with him. I mean, I've talked to him a lot, but just the first 5 minutes of talking to him, I knew he was the truth. So he's going to come on and talk about the laws and your rights to protest, and what do you do if your rights are violated, and what do you do if you get arrested. So we'll talk about that to make sure that you have a crash course, and you can of course join the conversation. I'll probably, since we have the interview at 9:30, I will probably open the lines at 9:15 so that we could have some conversations. And I did a separate video for the Milo Yiannopoulos, hate to massacre his last name, better known as Nero, on Twitter. A caller called in last night and asked me about it, and I didn't know at the time that he had been suspended or permanently barred from Twitter. So I really didn't give any comment commentary about that specifically last night. So I want to talk about that a little bit and then get your opinions, because some people in my audience really disagree with me on this, and that's cool. You know, we can always disagree. So let's jump in because there's a lot to cover tonight. I want to thank the patrons, man. You guys keep coming through, and it means it helps. You know, we're one step closer to me being able to grow this even further, to be able to spend more time doing this, more time with researchers doing some prep and planning and just delivering you a more robust show. So we can't do it without the patrons. Everybody give a hand for the patrons. Everybody just clap your hands because they're helping you. You know, those of you who can't give it, I got it, man. Trust me. I know what it's like to have $5 at the end of the month or -$5 at the end of the month. So everybody can't give. So thank a patron, and you can thank them by subscribing. You can thank us and help us by going to iTunes.com and giving us a review for the podcast. That helps out a lot. So all these things that you could do to help us out if you can't donate. But we have two new patrons, the two new patrons from last night. TD. I don't know, is that TD Jakes? But I just have TD pledged last night. Thanks so much for your donation. And John H., thank you so much for becoming a patron. We can't do it without you. So let's shift gears, hard shift here, and discuss what's happening in the international community, particularly with the U.S.-led airstrikes in Syria. It's going underneath the on Twitter, because with everything that happens, we do have not that the hashtag's not important, but I think the purpose of the hashtag is extremely important. Pray for Syria. We pray for everything. Pray for Syria. So the U.S. has, quote unquote, accidentally bombed a reported 85 Syrian civilians with a death toll of 56. And actually that toll has gone up to 60 as of this airtime. That includes 11 children. Because they mistook them for ISIS terrorists, operatives, and soldiers, militants. It's being described as a nightmare. Pictures and images of children buried under the rubble, bodies torn apart. This is the... So... If you think about it this way, if 85 American citizens were taken out by a mistake, by a U.S. mistake, let alone, I'm not talking about a war, right? I'm talking about a U.S. drone mistake killing 85 or bombing 85 and killing over 60. It would be revolutionary in that we would see an end to the droning program that day. That would be it. But we have created this otherism of people who are not American, primarily. That's the first thing. But we have some sympathy and empathy for Europeans. Every time something happens in France, pray for France, right? We have some kind of bond, an emotional bond that we can identify with the pain, and we see it as a tragedy. But then when we go to predominantly Muslim or Arabic nations or Middle Eastern nations, and African nations, we absolutely do not feel that pain. Not as a collective American conscience. No, we don't, because we don't give it a second thought. We don't have massive campaigns for the torn and tattered bodies of small Muslim children. And that's the first thing. It's that, these are, you know what? I think in spite of me being callous at times, I think part of my job is to humanize people that we otherwise would overlook. But these were families. These were men and women and boys and girls, sisters and brothers trying to escape violence, who were massacred by the U.S. government because of an error and a mistake. entire families. And it's almost to the point where it's the magnitude or the frequency with which this happens and how much carnage we have caused in the region. It feels empty to look at the families, this one incident, and shine a lot of light on this because it happens so frequently. But just imagine if this was an American family or 85 citizens. We shouldn't dehumanize, or we should not. And it's not even, I don't think it's as far as us regular people, citizens, I don't think it's an intentional dehumanization. I think it's it's an omission. We just forget that they are human, and we forget to give them a moment's thought in our mind, and even less a moment of time in our heart to realize that because of our tax dollar programs carried out and executed with our tax dollars, you have families that are broken and destroyed and completely the entire line, this bloodline wiped out. That's the first side of it. Then the second side of it, how can we be surprised when people become radicalized under these types of conditions? Don't tell me, America is great. Don't tell me that we are righteous and that we are just and that what we do is always right. Don't give me the fairy tale of America when and then use that fairy tale to dehumanize and to vilify an entire religion and say that these people are going online to get radicalized, when in actuality a lot of them have to do is look outside of their front damn door and see everything that they would ever need to see to hate the United States for the rest of their life. There should not be a single person in America who is surprised that there are people who hate us. They don't hate us because of the way. Here's the line they always get, and I'm sure you've heard it at the RNC this week. They hate us because of the way of they hate our way of lives. I can't even say it right now. They hate us because of the way of our life. Or shit, I tried it twice and messed up even more. Right? They hate our lifestyle. They hate our freedom. They hate our democracy. They hate this. They hate that. And they're just, the axis of evil. No, you bombed the shit out of their cousin. You bombed the hell out of their entire community. You destabilized not only their community, their nation, but the entire region. And you expect them to not. Hell, we get mad here in America when we talk about raising taxes. People talk about Second Amendment remedies when we talk about raising taxes. Yet they don't expect people to get radicalized when we have torn their children's bodies apart with droning programs. I place a very high value on human life. As if you can't tell, I put a very high value on human life, and I'm not capable of qualifying which human life. I can't. And if you see any other human being as less human than you or less valuable than you are not a good person. You are definitely not a good Christian, in my opinion, right? You're definitely not a good Christian from what I read. You're just not a good person, and you're not anything that should be celebrated or championed, because there's no human life that's more valuable than the next. And if you look at these people and can just turn a blind eye and just casually dismiss the pain that we caused as a nation, man, I was going to say you might be a conservative, but that's not fair. That's not fair. You just aren't a good person. And I think it happens. That's a bipartisan thing. This is this is a continuation. This is President Obama's policy abroad, right? This has no party affiliation. This is a bipartisan consensus in Washington that we're going to maintain this militaristic exploit in the region and assert our dominance, even to the expense of the lives of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of innocent people. So that's what's happening in the international news, and yeah, that shit is depressing as hell. All right. In other news, yeah, let's do something. I gotta get that off my shoulder. Let's go to Ben Carson. Let's go to Ben Carson because I gotta. Yeah, sorry. Like I said, I just value human life, man. Human life, the human consciousness to me is the most valuable thing in the damn universe. It's so rare. It's so so fleeting and easily cut off, but the consciousness is able to. I mean, I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said that that the fact that we can even comprehend eternity and infinity, the fact that we can comprehend infinity, but we can't live forever. We can fathom forever, but we can't live forever. And he was so disappointed because of how great our the potential of the human mind and our consciousness was, but how limited our lifespans are. And, you know, that's the truth. Like, every single life is a unique individual that wants to hold on to that life as much and as dearly as you do. And sometimes we just dismiss those lives as if they don't matter. Anyways, coming off of that, you know, hell. All right, this is Ben Carson. I have two clips of Ben Carson at the RNC. Ben Carson is everybody knows who Ben Carson is at this point. The neurosurgeon, the former candidate for president who lost twice, or was this his first time? He didn't run in 2012. But anyway, here's a clip of Ben Carson. Take a listen in.
This is a nation where our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, talks about certain inalienable rights that come from our Creator. This is a nation where our Pledge of Allegiance says we are one nation under God. This is a nation. This is a nation where every coin in our pocket and every bill in our wallet says, "In God we trust."
Yeah.
So are we willing to elect someone as president who has as their role model somebody who acknowledges Lucifer? Think about that.
No, I don't want to think about that because that's the most ridiculous thing. All right, so he's referencing Hillary Clinton's admiration for Saul Alinsky, who wrote the book Rules for Radicals. And in the preface of the book Rules for Radicals, I forgot exactly how it's phrased, but Saul Alinsky does allude to Lucifer. So Ben Carson, probably one of his best speeches that I've ever heard him give in terms of just the horse race and the sporting event of politics. He delivered it well, all those good things. But the shit he was saying was rather ridiculous, right? It was ridiculous from the beginning because he was applying the concept of reason and logic and trying to imbue it on top of an audience that is antithetical to reason and logic. You cannot get in front of an audience that completely dismisses all of the evidence in any scenario, right? Like any of our political issues and our policy issues, from climate change to a woman's right to choose and the implications of how damaging it would be if we rolled back Roe versus Wade, and all of the data that they dismiss every single day. You are not permitted, Ben Carson, to use Republican, GOP, or conservative and logic and reason in the same sentence. You're not with the platform that you guys came out with, not with the idiocy that shows up there. I'm not saying that all conservatives are illogical. I'm saying all the conservatives supporting Donald Trump. Okay, so I can't categorically say it. All right, I'll take it back. But the point is The platform, the positions, the policies, everything they stand for is completely illogical and antithetical to reason. That's number one. Number two, the issue of Lucifer. First of all, it's illogical to draw that because Hillary Clinton read Rules for Radicals that she is she recognizes Lucifer. Okay, first of all, even if she did, who the hell cares? That's number one. Number two, you can't draw that conclusion. Therefore, your entire premise of logic and reason, because you are a neurosurgeon, therefore you must be smart, goes out the window because of this invalid conclusion. That's number two. But then three, it's, I don't even know with this dude, man. So I'll say this. What he was saying was so dumb to me that as a Christian, I was so happy to be on the outside of his little club of evangelical, whatever you want to call it. You could put your own adjective there today. I don't have the adjective. Here's the second clip.
The secular progressive agenda is antithetical to the principles of the founding of this nation. And if we continue to allow them to take God out of our lives, God will remove himself from us. We will not be blessed, and our nation will go down the tubes. And we will be responsible for that. We don't want that to happen. Now, Donald Trump.
No, okay, hush. Okay, so many problems with everything about that. But first of all, thank you, Ben Carson, for segregating me from that audience, because, you know, you meant it as a pejorative, but I actually, and I think everybody listening to my show probably would wear it as a badge of honor. Damn right, we're secular progressives. And I'm saying that proudly as a Christian. I'm a secular progressive that doesn't want anything to do with the idiocy of the evangelical right, the conservative Christian movement here in the United States at all. At all. I just can't. So thank you, first of all. I've never been so proud to be called a secular progressive. I think I'm going to change the name of my show to the Secular Progressive Show. That's number one. Number two, you know, there's no way we can take God out of your life, right? Do I really have to argue the points of his ridiculous, you know, statement? But I guess I want to argue this one. Nobody can take a religion away from you, right? But you can easily say that to scare a bunch of old white people who do cling, like Obama said, to their guns and their Bibles, and they're afraid and they're terrified that the world changing around them means that somebody's coming to take something from them. You are just as free to do and live and talk and speak the way that you want to within reason, as so long as it doesn't harm somebody else. You know the rules of the game. Nobody's taking your religion. Nobody's taking your God away from you. Your God is just fine the way you want him, exactly where you want him. But saying sentences like that doesn't elicit applause in an audience like that. And so it's completely besides the point. It's a moot point. And I'm preaching to the choir. Caller, you are live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Hi, I have a question about, well, it's more about a fact I'd like to point out about our so-called moral, well, not moral, but like our leaders have trouble condemning our allies. Like when you were talking about airstrikes in Syria, right? Mm-hmm. So I was just pointing out that when, you know, those teachers who were killed in Mexico, like my government, Trudeau, I'm from Canada, but I think he was pretty silent, and he was like pretty friendly with the Mexican president. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering, I think there's like something really wrong there, and we need to start condemning our leaders, like urging our leaders to condemn our allies. Like, so like, at what point do we start? I think that's part of the dehumanization problem.
Absolutely.
Or whatever. So
you know what's funny?
That's all I just say.
Yeah, thanks for the call, man. It's funny that you say that because as you started talking, I thought you were going to talk about Saudi Arabia, right? Our ally that we know was involved in 9/11, that we know the greatest threat to women's rights, the human rights violations in their country, the beheadings in their country. Yet we treat them like our cherished allies and won't say anything to them. That's the American way. That's that's the way we do it. And at some point we do. At some point we absolutely have to start calling our allies out about these things. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and/or question? Caller, this is you. You're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and/or question? All right. We'll get the next caller. And actually, I think I may have lost one here. Yep, I'm a little befuddled right now. Hang on, let me see if I still have that caller. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and/or question? All right.
Oh, am I on?
Yep, this is you. What's going on?
Yeah, it's me, Scotty. Yeah, I don't know. I was watching the coverage about Austin Sterling last week, and I noticed a couple times that his son went out and pleaded for peace, was asking people to protest the right way. And I found it kind of strange where, it's not to say that he doesn't want peace or whatnot, but it seems like there's a pattern with all these families of police brutality. Like, they're always the one asking for peaceful protests. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, there's got to be lawyers involved in this. Yeah. And, because I remember, I don't know if you remember what happened with Ferguson, where Mike Brown's father, after, they were pleading for peace throughout the whole week of the verdict.
Yep.
And then once the verdict comes, he's saying, burn this bitch down.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there thinking, like, there's got to be the people involved, like clergymen, lawyers, and we all want peace. Like, we all want a peaceful resolution to these things going on. But it just seems like we're being asked to live up to a standard of respectability politics that, like, even the majority of the country isn't willing to go through. I mean, look at 9/11.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Forget that, man. I mean, if you're talking about, and thanks for the call, man. If you're talking about, stuff that happens to America, as soon as something happens to America, we're going to war, right? We are, we don't take any apologies. We don't ask, we don't offer, nor would we grant forgiveness. We go to war. As soon as you hurt us, we're going all out. And so it is a level of hypocrisy to have someone ask us to be forgiving. And there are all kind of players involved. You have publicists involved, you have preachers involved, clergy, you have politicians and lawyers involved, all trying to make sure that the peace is kept, right? And that the and I'm not really one for violence, primarily because the violence that we inflict and the carnage, the burning down, is really in our communities, right? Not that most of us have a lot of ownership in those communities, but still, it's our communities. When we get done burning our shit down, we don't have anywhere to go to stay, right? And then if we do burn some stuff down, we're burning down small businesses, from black owners or other we're hurting ourselves in most of these riots, because there's no way in hell they'll let those riots get over into affluent communities. I mean, think about it. If rage and anger got boiled over so much that protests actually left the black community, they will bring out the the National Guard. They will bring out they will crush it so quickly and so brutally that that it would never be tried again. So that's one of the reasons I'm like, we might as well have peace, because, we're not going to bring war to those factions, to that part of the nation that actually deserves it, or if you want to say it like that. Right. So peace is always something that we go for, but it's also something that is intentionally tried to pushed on us by the hurting families, the families that are hurting the worst. They're always, it goes back to Rodney King? Can't we all just get along? You know, here's the guy who actually had his head busted by the police, ultimately advocating for peace. Because if he had said, you know, keep burning this shit down, then the LA riots would have continued for a much longer time. So just explaining it, I'm not really on either side of it, but, you know, it is what it is. All right, folks, let's talk with Attorney Rothenberg. He is actually, just let me just bring him on, man. I'm do this long introduction, but he has been working here with us, the Progressive Army, with different shows and just giving us a lot of different advice. And he came to me about the protests that are going to happen in Philly. There are a lot of protests that are outlined in Philly. And the truth of the matter is, I don't think a lot of people understand it, because I don't understand all of my rights and all of the things that I can assert. So first of all, Michael, thank you so much for coming on. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what tell us a little bit about what you want to achieve with this crash course.
Thank you for having me on, first of all. But the most important thing that I'd like to achieve is that people can protest. It's their right to protest. And if they get arrested, no one is harmed. But most importantly, that people are aware of their rights, these constitutional rights that they do have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And we definitely appreciate it, because I think it's something people need to know. We're all headed down to Philly. I'm headed down on Saturday, and I know a lot of people are going on Saturday and Sunday. So there's going to be a lot of protests. So what are our rights in terms of protesting? What are the limitations to those rights? And then we'll talk about what happens if we get arrested after that.
Okay, first I want to start off, I'm going to explain the procedure and what happens and what your rights are, but the most important thing is for everyone to realize that realistically, the police are not going to have the manpower to accommodate all of these rights at the same time. So most likely, more likely than not, you know, they're going to basically abate these rights completely. But in that regard, the most important thing to understand is that there's a big distinction between being detained by a police officer and being arrested. Mm-hmm. If you're being detained, it's basically like the police officer asking you certain questions, and you essentially feel like you can't leave if you wanted to. At that point in time, you have the right to ask of the police officer whether or not you are free to leave. Mm-hmm. If he says that you're not free to leave, at that point, you have to assume that most likely you're going to be under arrest. Mm-hmm. Now, everyone watches TV and they see the police officer do the Miranda rights. That only comes into play in certain circumstances. So if they're not going to take a statement from you, they don't really have to read you your rights at that point if essentially you're not being arrested completely. But at that point, if you feel like you're being arrested or you're about to be arrested, the most important thing you can do is immediately ask for an attorney. Mm-hmm. They can no longer question you once you have asked for an attorney. In addition to that, it's very important, do not say anything. Do mm-hmm. not try to negotiate. Do not try to sit there and appease to the officer's sense of liberty and whatnot. He doesn't care, and he's going to use everything that you're saying against you. So that's extremely, extremely important. Immediately, if you get arrested, ask for an attorney. Before that, though, if, let's say, you're being detained by the police officer, there's a good chance that he's going to ask you if he can pat you down. You have a right to say no. Mm-hmm. So at that point, what you need to specifically say is, I do not consent for a search. I do not consent for you to touch me in any of these circumstances. I want to say another thing. I should have started off with this, but despite how angry people might be, it's best to try and be as courteous with the officer as you can, because essentially it's going to be your word versus his, and it's better if you're recording something or whatever it might be, that he has nothing to say. He can't say you resisted. He can't mm-hmm. say that you were being disruptive or you disobeyed any of his orders. So it's hard to do, I understand, but just be very courteous in those scenarios. Mm-hmm. Getting back to what to do in that scenario, if the cop detains you, you can say, why am I being detained? Now, at this point, he might not have anything or any valid reason to detain you, and it's called reasonable suspicion. In order for him to detain you, he has to have this level of reasonable suspicion. But again, due to the size of the protests, none of these rules are going to be abided by. So it's sad, but it's true. So if you happen to say, why am I stopped, or why are you asking me questions, whatever it might be, don't at all allow him to say, well, why do you think I stopped you? Anything in that circumstance. You don't want to give anything away.
Right.
You basically need to know that he has a right to ask you a question. You have a right to say, am I free to go? If he says no, that means that you're going to be placed under arrest. If you're placed under arrest, you have a right to request an attorney. Now, the officer's going to try and talk to you if you get arrested and say, listen, just tell me this, tell me that. No matter what it is, I'm going to let you go. Don't say anything. Every time he says a question, I want my attorney.
Right.
Which, beyond your name and maybe your address, because they're going to find that out anyway. But beyond that, I want an attorney. I want to speak to an attorney. I want to speak to an attorney.
Let me jump in there real quick, Michael, and ask some specific questions, because you said it twice, something that's very important, that at events of the magnitude that we're getting ready to go into in Philly, with thousands upon thousands of people and limited manpower, it's very likely that the police officers will not recognize some of the basic principles and procedures and rights and that we would expect in a normal encounter. And so is that why we saw in Baton Rouge, and we saw in Ferguson, we saw in Baltimore, where without saying anything, they go directly to arrest someone and detain someone? Help us understand how that happens, and what do you do in that type of scenario?
Well, it's funny. We're lucky the convention's in Pennsylvania, because in certain states, criminal law is different by state. In Pennsylvania, you actually have a right to record a police officer in his official capacity. So that means, I was in New York at the protest, and one of the first things the police officers were saying was, turn off your phone, stop recording. Mm-hmm. No one should do that in any case, but they don't have the right to tell you that. But in Pennsylvania, you're allowed to record whatever they're doing. So as in the other states, what you were referring to, it just basically rights and procedures went out the window, again, because of the threat and the magnitude. But in that scenario, if your rights are completely going out the window, you need to do your best to record whatever's going on. So something I would suggest is, if you feel you're going to be under arrest, take your cell phone, whatever your device might be, put it in your jacket pocket or pocket where it will be able to pick up your voice and narrate very calmly what's going on. I am not resisting arrest. I am doing whatever you say, this, that, the other. I am interlocking my fingers behind my head. Whatever you feel is, or whatever you are observing in that scenario, just narrate. If the cop's being aggressive, discuss it, provide details. Because later on, that's going to be your only evidence in any way, shape, or form. Because other than that, it's your word versus the officer's word. And people are going to believe.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So let's go into some more specifics then. So at what point do the police officers just move to arrest? Like, in my mind, like every time I see mass arrests, I'm like, okay, they must have given some order that was not acquiesced to, or are they simply there and now they're shutting the protests down? Like, what actions will these protesters likely do to cause their arrest?
Well, that's the thing. These are very different protests than have ever been had before in certain regards, because it's this many people unified. So even if you're not being obstructive, or you're not protesting violently, or you're not bothering anybody, I honestly do believe that to an extent the cops are just going to be intimidated by the sheer amount of people, and they're going to just start taking people away with the zip tie plastic vans that they use and putting them on a bus, and that's it. So, but the most important thing in that type of scenario, even if they give an order to that, you need to stop doing this, you need to stop doing that, essentially do it. You're not helping anybody by getting arrested, and you're definitely not helping anybody by getting harmed. So, again, I don't believe that they're going to follow the normal protocol saying cease, desist, this is an unlawful protest, whatever it might be. But you do have a right to protest, and you do have a right to be there, as long as you're not obstructing anything, or that you're not blocking the streets, things of that nature, essentially.
So we can already assume, right? I know there's a lot of permitted protests, but there are going to be some unpermitted protests that just spark off. There are going to be disruptions. People are going to block some traffic. So they're going to, they're going to do all of this. So in those in those types of protests, we can just guarantee you're going to be arrested, right? So once you're arrested, you're taken to jail. You're taken to the station, or you're put in there, just sitting inside of their van for a few hours, which I read happened in Baton Rouge last week. What happens next, and how do they, if they're in Philly, they're just in Philly for enough time for this convention, how do they get out and get home?
Okay. First, I want to take a step back. You should go to the protest with somebody. You should exchange cell phone numbers, and you should try to keep an eye on each other so everyone could be in contact if something does happen. Also, it's very important, try to take 2 forms of ID if you can, and some change so you can make a call, because odds are they're not going to let you use your cell phone if you do get arrested. Try not to have anything that you don't need on you, whether it be anything that's not necessary to be there, because that's going to give them an excuse to try and arrest you. And plus, if they do arrest you and they find something that shouldn't be there, it's going to just make any charge worse. But while you're sitting, you could actually be sitting there for up to 6 hours. But during that process, immediately the first thing you say is, I want my attorney. That sets off a certain trigger that they can no longer question you about anything related to that. Very important that you don't sit there and talk to other people, because they can listen in. When you have your right to call the attorney, be very careful of what you say, because again, the police officers can record almost anything that goes on in the cell or the jailhouse, whatever it might be. But the most important thing to do is try to get a few numbers of attorneys or people that will be down there. I have a number for the ACLU of Pennsylvania. It's 877-745-2258. And there's also another organization that's specifically set up for the protest. It's called Up Against the Law Collective. Their number's 484-758-0388. So if you don't have an attorney specifically, reach out to one of those people. Other than that, you're going to just have to wait there till they process you or release you with a desk ticket appearance. Again, don't say anything. Don't try to say, I was only doing this, I was only doing that. You have a right to not say anything. You have a right to not say anything you don't want. Even when the officer detains you before arrest, if he asks you questions that you don't want to answer, you don't have to answer. You have a right to not respond. Odds are he can try to manipulate that into some sort of suspicion, but you have a right to be silent. You have a right to not incriminate yourself. You have a right to have an attorney during any portion after the arrest.
All right, Michael. So this is the crash course. You provided us a lot of valuable information that some of the people going may not have been aware of. So I want to thank you for that. Give us the. I want you to.
If there's any other questions, let me know.
Yeah. So a couple of things that I want you to do before I let you go. I want you to get the last word. And as you're giving us your last statements, I want you to give us the number one thing out of everything. If they don't remember anything else, what's that one thing that they should remember? And then last but not least, tell them how to get up with you if they have questions.
Okay. The most important thing to remember is that you have a right to be there. So whether they tell you you don't have a right, you have to leave, you have to do this, you have to come with us, you need to remember that right. And remember to be there, and don't give them any reason to want to arrest you, whether it be protesting overly angrily, whatever it might be. But you're there for a reason and for a cause, and try to have fun doing it and not get harmed. That's the most important thing. And if anyone needs to get in touch with me, you can contact me at my cell phone, 516-996-3278, on my Twitter account, which is REEL Rotation 27. And again, it's my pleasure to assist in any way possible. So thank you for having me.
Hey, my pleasure, Michael. We'll definitely have you back on whenever we can. And just quick question. All the time we've been talking, I never asked you, are you going to Philly next week?
I'm most likely going.
All right. So we'll see you there.
I want to be there just in case anything happens,
Yeah, absolutely. Because I have your cell phone number. I'll be calling you if I get snatched up on the side of the road. Thanks so much for joining me, man. We'll catch you next time.
All right, no problem.
857-600-0518 is the number to join in if you want to join the conversation. So yeah, just some basic, some things to keep in mind. Some things that these are things that you're likely not going to remember in the heat of the moment, which even if you know all of this and you knew all this, you need to write it down, because there's a good chance some of this you're going to forget. The intimidation factor is huge, right? So the fact that in Pennsylvania you do have the right to record, and I think that's a huge thing to keep in mind. All right, so let's talk about a couple of other things, and then we'll open up the lines. 857-600-0518. I want to talk about this story from last night, or the ongoing story, the story of Milo, also known as Nero. I'm gonna stop messing up his last name. I don't like to be it's too disrespectful to people's names. But the incident with Milo Y and Leslie Jones, we talked about it. I alluded to it on Monday. We discussed it a little bit more last night. And I did a standalone video of it, but I really wanted to open it up to you guys, right? The listener, because, if you watched my video on YouTube, you already know where I'm coming from. It's not for me, okay. So first of all, let's put it into context. Right? He's an editor and a journalist at Breitbart, right? A right-wing conservative rag. He is a YouTuber with hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and he is formerly on Twitter with hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter. So he's influential in the conservative sphere, particularly the alt-right sphere. He's a gay Republican, a gay Trump supporter. So, I mean, he really appealed to a very large audience, and he has notoriously been a vicious, for lack of a better word, troll on Twitter, which, for the most part, you have the right to be and the right to do. But Twitter does have terms of service. Twitter is not the federal government. Your speech is not protected on Twitter. Your speech and your behavior on YouTube, on internet podcasts, on Twitter, on Facebook, all of that is regulated by corporations. And I think that's the number one thing people forget, is that when you get online, it may feel like you have a vast amount of freedom, but your freedom only goes so far. And if you haven't read the terms of service, there's a good chance you've been violating the terms of service all along. You just haven't been caught. Like, for instance, I did not know personally that you could not dogpile. I never made it's not a thing that I do, but it kind of inevitably happens when you subtweet somebody or you quote somebody or you share something to all of your followers. It's very likely that if you have tens of thousands of followers, that they're going to all attack that person that you put in front of them. Right? It happens. We all do it, and to greater or lesser extent. And this is why he got permanently banned. It's not a one-time occurrence. He has been suspended before with warnings. Like, Twitter doesn't go from 0 to ban. Twitter has a progressive, punitive process where they warn you, that you get some notifications in your emails. I know because I've been suspended. And then you get this initial suspension that lasts for a day or two while you explain to them why you're going to be a good boy going forward, right? So he's gone through all of these processes and still carried himself in the same way, violating Twitter's terms of service, and he got banned. But everybody is losing their minds as if this is a political correctness. This is a violation of free speech, and this is liberalism gone run amok. No, this is the invisible hand bitch slapping someone who did not want to obey the corporate overlords. This is what a businesses do. You cannot go into someone's business and behave and carry yourself the way that you want to if it undermines their business, or if it's just some type of behavior: no shoes, no shirt, no service. It's very simple. But you have a lot of people who are not able to see it because it has this tinge of social justice warriors. Dum, dum, dum. You know, because God forbid a social justice warrior would actually say something or get something or have a victory on their side. You know, but because of that, a lot of people are like, this is just wrong. But it's very, very simple. Now, there are two problems that I do have with it that I haven't discussed before tonight, and I'm going to discuss it now. Number one, the issue of dogpiling is not a direct issue of something that you've done beyond sharing a tweet. And yes, this is the world we live in. If you don't have a Twitter account and you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, I don't know what to tell you folks. Right. So I hope that everyone listening, I mean, there are like a few 100 million people on Twitter. So that means probably 99% of my listeners should have a Twitter account. So you should understand. All right. So if you tweet and share someone's tweet and you cannot control your audience. And so the question is, to what extent are we responsible for the actions of our followers? That is a valid and legitimate question that Twitter needs to answer. Twitter needs to answer that, because if I share a tweet and I make it clear that I don't want people dogpiling, am I still responsible for what my followers do? Now, while that may be outlined in the terms of service agreement that no one ever reads, and I have not finished reading yet, I don't know, but they need to make a blog post about it because nobody's going to read their terms of service, Twitter. So I think that's one thing that's really questionable, right? So explain very clearly what responsibility a person has for their followers, not to their followers, but for their followers. Make that expressly clear so that we can know. And then number two, the consistency of doing this. When, where, why, and how are you going to do it, right? Because what happens is people get away with this all day, every day, on both sides of the political spectrum, on every side of every argument. There is not a single ideology that's pure in this conversation. There's not a single orientation. There's not a single religion, agnostic, atheist. Everybody has skin in this game where they have harassed, they have belittled, they have dogpiled or participated in a dogpile. Everybody who's on Twitter, unless you have an egg account and never used it, except for all the eggs that are trolls themselves, you have in some way been involved with this. And until somebody reports you, you can get away with it. And then even when somebody reports you, a lot of times Twitter says, you know, they have very clear policies that they say they go by, but we see all types of behavior that people get away with. And I believe from just my experience with people harassing me, which I don't talk about because, you know, most of the time I don't give a shit. But with people harassing me, you know, Twitter makes it clear that that the extent of a person's language and what they say, they almost have no limit to that, except for, I think, express violence. You know, if someone says something violent, I think Twitter will act. But someone calling you the N-word, someone calling you a bitch, someone calling you the C word, someone calling you a gorilla, an ape, an orangutan, an idiot, a dumbass, all the above. I mean, literally, people can do it all day, every day. So the question is, where is that real threshold, right? Where is it? But more specifically, the question is the threshold on dogpiling, because that's what Milo was ultimately suspended for. Now, Twitter needs to answer those questions. Because people I've seen accounts be suspended and miss me with all of this. Oh, it is the liberal backlash because it's somehow, you know, nobody likes conservatism. And because you don't like conservatism, you want to censor conservative speech. Shut up. No, you get away with it just like everyone else. that's like number 6. I don't even know what number I'm on. So, and then the last but not least, and I said it earlier before, it's not even about a question of having, Twitter deny access. People have tried to draw parallels between this and the bakery in Indiana, their right to deny the LGBTQ community from buying a cake, right? We all know the issue that has been coming to the forefront for a long time. There are protected categories and categories of people that you cannot discriminate against. You cannot discriminate against someone for their religion. You cannot discriminate against someone because of their sexual orientation or their gender identity. You can't discriminate because of their race. You can't discriminate because of their age. There's a list of things that you cannot discriminate because of. Being a prick and being an asshole is not on that list. A company can refuse you service because you are being an asshole. And this is ultimately what Twitter has done to Milo. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question? Caller, you're live. What's your name, comment, and or question? All right. We have to grab the next caller. 857-600-0518 if you want to join the conversation. I want to know what you think. What's your opinion? What are your thoughts about that? Here we go. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question? 857-600-0518. Yep, you're live. Hello? You're listening. I hear it in the radio in the background. If you want to mute that. And
yep. Sorry. Yeah. I just called in from watching the show. I'm actually really glad that you got a chance to talk about Milo Yiannopoulos, though, because, boy, I'll be honest, I've been watching this guy since he showed up around the time of Gamergate about 2 years ago, and it's been a shit show. I'm actually really glad that you brought him up, because I think this. If there's anything that has helped to precipitate the kind of atmosphere that has allowed Trump to rise to the position that he is, I do feel that it is partly due to Milo's influence. Because what he helped to do, well, it's not him alone. Mind you, I don't think that Milo alone is responsible for this. That's way too much responsibility for an idiot like him.
Okay, go for it.
But I do feel that what Milo and many other people had done, particularly during Gamergate, was that they utilized this as an opportunity to capitalize on these alt-right factions. Factions of, you had people like some right-wing libertarians, some dark Enlightenment monarchists, some neo-fascists, and then the general scrubbery of Chan lords, who seized upon the opportunity as an excuse to blast apart women on the internet, using a convenient excuse of, it's about ethics in games journalism. Because, the most important topic in political battleground of our times is freaking video games.
Yeah.
Who gets to be the star in a video game?
Yeah. I saw
Milo helped.
Go ahead. You got it.
Oh, you've seen it?
No, I was going to say I saw a lot of a lot of the Gamergate era was really capitalized on both sides of the argument. But I see the correlation, because it really did create this divide that was they exploited a very easy divide that is easily exploited, right? And it seems like he continued that trend for a very long time. Go ahead and finish your thought.
No. I guess because there's so much I could bring up, but I think what Milo helped to do was normalize and he wasn't alone. There were a lot of people like a lot of the YouTube atheist community helped a lot with helping build up Gamergate up until the point where Jordan Owen and the famous Sarkeesian Effect documentary happened, and it kind of fell apart after that. But what they had helped to do was normalize the was the online harassment and abuse of women and as well as minorities, and utilizing and ironically utilizing identity politics in a very similar fashion as Hillary Clinton had in order to cloak themselves in a shield of invincibility that, well, in Gamergate's part, it folded like tissue paper upon closer inspection.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting on some key things there, right? And I appreciate the call. There's a couple more people in line I want to get in, but you're hitting on a couple things that is very nefarious about this. So one of the things I found out about Milo Yiannopoulos, I'm going to do my best to say it, was an article that he wrote some years ago, and let me say allegedly wrote some years ago because I read it, but I didn't get a second confirmation on the source, right? So, but I believe there's an article that he wrote before Gamergate that was really saying that we should have some type of confirmation of identities for online users, right? Some way that we can verify them so that they can be held accountable for their actions and their language and their behavior online. And to hear him say that around 2012 and then today be the greatest beneficiary of anonymity and the online trolling community, it really shows you that there probably was a very opportunistic shift where he wanted to capitalize on this this division and that was exposed by Gamergate. Like, I mean, Gamergate was so huge. I can't believe that it was, you know, that something like that became so huge. But I mean, let me take a second to put aside all the nuance. One of my favorite debate groups on Facebook is the Political, Philosophical, and Religious Debate Group. Go look them up. Great group. I spent like a year in there before I started my show, just debating people. And they have rule number 1. Don't be a dick. And I'm sorry if that's chauvinistic or whatever, but I'm using it as a pejorative, right? Don't be an asshole. Don't be, you know, they have made an industry. And I don't care about your, at this point, I am not arguing about your right to be an asshole. Yes, you have a constitutional free speech amendment to be an asshole, to not have the government infringe your right to be an asshole. Great. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that people have made an entire industry out of being jerks and harassing women and harassing the LGBTQ community and harassing minorities and black people. And if you intersect on all of those, then you're the trifecta of getting harassed. You know, we can harass you for being black. We can harass you for being a woman. We can harass you for being gay. Oh, and God don't let you be overweight. We can harass you for being fat, right? So it's all of these. And people have made an industry, a fortune off of doing that. And we sit back and allow them to do it. As liberals, we sit back and watch them do it because we will protect your right to say what you want to say as much as we would protect our right to say what we want to say. And in theory, that's good. That's cool. But what about a person's right to exist without this type of harassment? And don't tell me that this, first of all, if you tell me the harassment doesn't go on, go read my mentions. Go read my comment section in YouTube. It goes on all day, every damn day. I just don't complain about it because I'm a bigger asshole. And matter of fact, I have to roll. You know how many comments I've deleted of my own? I don't delete other people's comments. I delete my own comments because I'm usually like, that's not a good look, Ben. That's really mean. Don't try to make them jump off of a cliff. You know, be a better person. I'm constantly having to delete my comments because I returned in kind, right? If you're kind to me, I'm going to be kind to you. If you're an ass to me, I'm going to be an even bigger ass to you, right? So that's why I never even mention it. But if you want proof, just go look at my comment section. And I'm a dude. And I'm a dude who doesn't give a fuck, hell, right? So imagine what they do to women YouTubers and people online and on Twitter. I see it all day long. And it's not a question of whether or not you have the right to do it. I'm saying you're a piece of shit if you make an entire industry out of doing that. And all the people who support your industry are pieces of shit and feces as well. And thankfully, while you may be protected from the federal government and protected and allowed to be a prick, I respect that right and I celebrate that right. But thankfully, no business has to endure you coming into their place of business and ruining their business for other customers, making them lose other customers, making them lose users because you want to be celebrated as being a piece of shit. So thankfully, all these conservatives, actually not thankfully, pause, let me start a new sentence. All of you conservatives who celebrate the autonomy and the freedom of corporations, their corporations are people, my friend, and the power of the free market, this was the doing of the free market. This was a doing of a business that said, we don't want you here anymore. And you know what? There's not a damn thing that you can do about it. Cry all you want. I don't think you're going to find any solace or any solidarity, rather, with people to whom you've been an asshole. You're only going to get some sympathy from other assholes. And because I know the asshole community very well, that sympathy runs up pretty quick. So cry your tears, bitches. The game is up.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.